But now some controversial research from across the Atlantic. A study from the University of Rochester in America suggests atheists are smarter than those of faith. A team from the university came to that conclusion after examining 63 scientific studies into the relationship between intelligence and religious belief. They also found that infants with higher intelligence would be more likely to reject religion. And older people with above average IQs are less religious. Well, we'll discuss those claims in a moment. But first, reaction from someone whose job is to nurture religious study. Cranmer Hall in the northeast of England is a theological college that has been training people for ordination for over a century. It's a centre of religious education and an integral part of St John's College at Durham University. And Deputy Warden Reverend Kate Bruce takes issue with the American study.
They talked about intelligence in terms of the ability to make connections, think rationally, learn from mistakes, things like that, which seems to me to be a very male understanding of intelligence. And I'd want to ask the question, well, what about creative intelligence? What about imaginative intelligence or emotional intelligence, spiritual insight and wisdom, or the grammar of kindness?
The study suggests that religious beliefs are irrational and not anchored in science, and therefore unappealing to intelligent people.
I actually think that faith calls us to be open-minded, to be open to the possibility that the purely rational is not all that there is to the world. Imagine, take things like mystery and awe and beauty and love.
And whether you're an atheist or a devout believer, Reverend Bruce says there are more important measures by which to judge a person.
It seems to me that a life of love is not about arguing about who's cleverer than who, but it is about rolling up your sleeves and caring for the poor and expressing the grace of God in the everyday muddle of life, in all of its glory and all of its pain. And if that's a perspective that lacks intelligence, well...
Whatever the current debate, Reverend Bruce and her students believe that ultimately the atheists will be the ones proved to be not so clever.
If from the religious perspective, Christian perspective is right, I'll get to say, I told you so.
For all eternity.
For all eternity. What a joy that would be.
The Reverend Kate Bruce there, mixing religion with comedy as well. So are those with faith closed-minded and therefore less intelligent? What do you think? You can join in by webcam or make your point by phone, text, email or online. Jay, are you convinced at all by this claim?
Look, I'm a physicist and a Hindu, and yet I'm not surprised at the findings of this particular research. I'm not surprised.
Why?
The reason is this. I say a clear-thinking atheist or a humble agnostic is far better, more clearer than, if you like, a theist who is kind of quite, muddled up about his thinking. The reason is this: an atheist, in a way, is prepared to explore every aspect of his human existence through rationality, through the full glare of rationality. Anything that does not make sense to his, doesn't agree with his common sense, is prepared to reject. Now, a theist, who believes in a supreme personality and sitting in heaven, has issues here, because there are certain serious issues, philosophic issues, that arise in the name of theos. Theos comes with unanswered questions, a lot of baggage, if I can put it. And the fact that the atheist is prepared to, in a way, compromise the integrity of his thinking by allowing or accepting or continuing to, hang on to this idea, is going to, in a way, compromise the integrity of his thinking process.
All right, David.
I think, Samir, it was George Orwell who observed that there are some things so absurd that only intellectuals could believe them. And so it is with this particular study from this university.
Isn't it about closed minds, though? The idea of being closed to challenging a hierarchy, a set of beliefs handed down perhaps by parents, by authority figures?
In the first instance, the study makes an assertion that one group of people are less intelligent than another group of people. Now, that seems a strange starting perspective for any study, from my point of view. But in the second instance, in what way can a causal link between intelligence on the one hand and faith on the other hand, be proven.
I don't think it's about a
basically-
causal link necessarily. I mean, you could argue it's a correlation, but just the idea that religious belief may be more likely to go with a closed mind, a less rational mind, which perhaps is linked to intelligence.
Well, then, if we want to pursue that particular line, there are similar studies from other US universities that suggest, for example, that people of faith lead happier lives, have better marriages, have better levels of health. I mean, I think it's very dangerous to try and draw correlations or causations when patently it's so much more complex than that. There are obviously some very smart people who have no faith, and there are also some very smart people who've got faith.
Larry, there's some religious hierarchy in your family, I think. Is that your father and grandfather were preachers?
I'm personally an atheist, but the Welsh side of my family, my grandfather was a Methodist minister, my uncle was a Methodist minister, my aunt was a lay preacher, my father was a lay preacher. So it was very strongly religious on that side of the family. And my father left that faith largely because he felt that questioning wasn't encouraged, and he wanted it to have independent thought, and therefore but he still had respect for that religion, and I can absolutely understand why. I think with any religion, as you grow up and you become a teenager, if you're not questioning it, then I have to question your intelligence. Yeah. But it's whether you then decide to come back to it or not. I now think that your female priest was very interesting, talking about the different kinds of intelligence. If there was an inference, there was a shot of a wonderful piece of stained glass. Some of the most beautiful objects, the most beautiful music, the most beautiful art has been the result of religious belief. So I don't think you can say that people who are religious are less intelligent, because there are all kinds of intelligence. The one thing I would add, though, is that religion has been used historically to keep people stupid, i.e. don't try and change the political system in this country, because in the next life you'll have a lovely life.
Well, that's an interesting one.
But that no longer holds sway, I think.
Well, I want to bring Kate Smurthwaite here, who's an atheist activist. There is quite a kind of almost political campaign going, isn't there, about whether atheists are somehow superior to people of faith. What's your view on this discussion? Oh, sorry, we've lost Kate at the moment. We'll try and come back to her later. I think we have Father Andrew Pinsent, who's a Catholic priest and a former particle physicist at CERN, working on the... Did you work on the Large Hadron Collider then?
Actually, I worked on its predecessor, and we were trying to find the Higgs boson.
I mean, your faith, some people might say, is completely at odds with rational scientific thinking. What do you say?
I'm often asked this question. In fact, I was recently asked, how could I be a Catholic priest and believe in the Big Bang Theory? And in fact, I just showed this picture, which I think your camera could just be able to pick up.
Tell us who's it. I can see Einstein in there.
Einstein.
But the other figure, just to hold a bit closer, that was the man who invented the Big Bang Theory. And as you can probably see, he was also a priest. He was a Catholic priest called Georges Lemaitre, and he wrote the crucial paper in 1927. And there was also a priest who invented genetics. Both theories were actually condemned in the Soviet Union for 30 years, and some people died for holding them. So clearly the relationship of faith and of science and of atheism is much more complicated than is popularly imagined.
It is interesting, though, now there is this sense that religion, in some ways, some elements of it are getting more conservative, and perhaps that's why there's new interest in whether atheism, is enabling people to challenge orthodoxies and make innovations that are changing the world for the better.
Well, I think all good religious people should have very inquiring minds. In fact, back in the Old Testament, there's a famous book called the Book of Job, where Job spends his the whole of the book arguing with God, and at the end, God commends him for doing so. Similarly, Jesus Christ, at the age of 12, is found in the temple asking questions. So I think anyone who wants to be genuinely in their religious tradition ought to look at these lessons. I mean, people at the centre of many faiths, they've often had very inquiring minds, and I think that should be encouraged.
Joe, I mean, there is an interest. I remember debating on a programme last year that Stephen Jones, who teaches genetics, talked about students from certain religious backgrounds, I think mostly Muslims, who were walking out of his classes on evolution because they refused to believe it. Look, I mean, is that something to do with the times we're in rather than religion per se?
My experience of interacting with the youth in many schools throughout the country is that majority of youngsters who are thinking for themselves at the age of 16, etc., majority would now happily claim to be atheist or agnostic, majorities. This is the world that we live in. So what is gone wrong? Nothing has gone wrong. What I am suggesting is there is a reconciliation at a deeper level between what religions were talking about or are talking about and what science is now discovering at the cutting edge discoveries. So what I am suggesting is that it is necessary to move away from a more theistic or a personality oriented religion to a more principle oriented religion. We see not God sitting in heaven, but God is lighting up whole of humanity. This is called spiritual humanism. So I am promoting a different vision which is deeper, if you like, the deeper vision that religions were all about anyway, and what science of today through quantum physics and through neuroscience is very clearly pointing to a very deeper dimension to humanity, which is essentially spiritual and not material.
But let's just consider one other aspect of this kind of atheist supremacy from this particular report. If you follow the logic that atheist people are more enlightened and smarter and have higher IQs, then it would follow to me that a society organised and run by such people would be a virtual paradise on earth. We've had a few of those. Yep. Stalin's Soviet Union was one. Communist China was another. Where did that lead? It led to the gulags. It led to the death of millions of people. So perhaps atheists should have a little bit of modesty rather than crowing about their alleged intelligence, because history doesn't particularly demonstrate it.
Jay?
Yes, in fact, it is true. Just as you have kind of very bombastic theists, making absolute claims about their religious beliefs, we also have scientists who are very stodgy, highly materialistic, and not prepared to look at a deeper dimension that science is now promoting. Through the integrity of science, we are discovering a deeper dimension to our being as well as the world that we see around us. And the fact that there are certain very stodgy, materialistic scientists who are not prepared to acknowledge it is very interesting, because I say, do you know what quantum is telling you? The underpinning to this reality is non-material, and the word that we use is spiritual. This is Jay, the only spirit we believe in comes in bottles during Christmas time. And my response is, the spirit that I talk about gives a bigger kick than the spirit that comes in bottles.
Larry?
I think for most people, we'll take common sense approach to this, and they would say there are, as we heard, there are clever people who are atheists and there are clever people who are religious. I think I'm really heartened, really, to hear this idea that actually religion can be about questioning, yes, and religion can be open. Yes. But I think it does depend which religion.
Well, that's an interesting issue. Expand on that.
Well, I think, and I don't know much about Hinduism, but I'm beginning to think it's quite nice. I quite like the idea of Hinduism because you saw a very good advertisement for it. The idea, but the idea that actually it is open to discussion. I think Judaism is similar. It's, yes, open to discussion.
So is Christianity as well. I mean, all faiths, I think, at their heart, do provide for people to think and to consider
Except
and to
with
reflect.
Catholicism, as far as because I went to a church school, but Catholicism, you have to believe that you are drinking the blood of Christ and you are eating the flesh of Christ. There's no question, there's no discussion about that.
There's a leap of faith involved.
Can we come back to this in a second?
We'll come back to this in just a second, because I'd like to bring in an atheist point of view. Kate Smurthwaite joins us on the phone. She's an atheist activist. We've heard a lot of challenge to this idea that there is any greater intelligence in people who choose to be atheist. What's your view on this research?
Sorry, first of all, I agreed to come on the show if you would introduce me as atheist activist and comedian.
And comedian. No, we like comedians on this show. Welcome.
Just because I'm doing a show, it's a little bit of a waste to come on and not mention that up at the Edinburgh Fringe. But what is my point of view? Well, my point of view is that, this research comes as absolutely no surprise. It shouldn't be taken as a generalisation. Yep. We shouldn't look at it and say, well, therefore, I can infer what somebody's intelligence is from their religion. Of course we shouldn't. If you're looking for a job and you're looking to hire somebody intelligent, you should test their intelligence in the same way that you shouldn't say, oh, I'm hiring somebody tall, it must be a man. You should, of course, treat every individual as an individual. But to see that there is an overall trend that says more intelligent people are more likely to be atheists, well, I think that's absolutely unsurprising. One of the key hallmarks, as it were, of intelligence.
Why is it unsurprising to you?
Well, because one of the key hallmarks of intelligence is the ability to differentiate fact from fiction. I think if we looked at intelligent people, we'd find they're less likely to believe horoscopes. We'd find they're less likely to believe mediums and psychics and ghost hunting things and all kinds of things like that. We would find that these, widely believed but popular myths, and people who are intelligent are more likely to question them. And it might sound like a shocking thing for some people to accept, but the brutal reality is that religion is one of these widely accepted myths. And I think that, intelligent people around the world have worked that out and identified that.
All right, Kate, thank you. We were talking about, things like the leap of faith to believe in transubstantiation, for example. I mean, that's where you do have a fundamental gulf. And people might say, if you swallow that at a very young age, it might close your mind to to developing your kind of full potential?
Well, I think we're all sentient beings, and we all, I think, have the inherent responsibility to think for ourselves and to come to our own conclusions. But I mean, honestly, to listen to what Kate's just said, again, another instance of atheist supremacy, and to dismiss millions of people around the world.
I think she's careful to say it's not sweeping.
She did say that it was obvious to her that atheists, you know, are naturally more intelligent. I would suggest she needs to look in a mirror, perhaps, because it didn't come across to me from what she said that she maybe possessed the intelligence of which she boasted.
Jay, Larry first.
One thing I would say, listening to Kate Smurthwaite there, is that there was it sounded quite egotistical. It sounded like the world is made in my image, and I understand that as an atheist, but I also think that with maturity, there comes an opening of the mind to the possibility that there might be something. I don't rule out the possibility, because I don't think it can all just be about us, but I think that's partly age-related, and perhaps in another decade she might...
Richard Dawkins has stirred up controversy by making a comparison, hasn't he?
In fact, this is what I'm taking him on for. For example, he's promoting strongly materialistic humanism, and I'm promoting spiritual humanism. The difference is this: he's saying that we are special, humanity is special because of accidents of evolution. I'm saying no. The reason why we are special is because something non-material is manifesting itself through this material frame, the spirit.
All right, thank you. I would like to have read some comments from viewers. Oh, here we go. Got a couple just magically appeared. Charlie says, how many children would be religious if not pushed into it by their parents? Ian says, being an atheist, I don't believe I'm smarter. I believe in science and fact over unproven faith. Thank you all very much. Thank you for all our contributors on this too. We have to end it